Hello everyone and welcome back to Priest Brothers Lines. My name is Colby and today I'm going to be doing a video going over some of the basics of wiring for O-scale, or at least how I did my wiring. It's something I had to learn from scratch from other YouTube videos like this, or from reading stuff and just kind of doing some trial and error with different products. And so I have an array of products that I'm going to be showing you here that I used on my layout. I'm going to show you how I use them, some of the specifics of that, and go through a little bit of the details of that. So this is a very beginner's, new person looking to get into doing a wiring a layout beyond just a simple 2 wires going to the track like a starter pack would come with, but how to, at least how I wired my layout here with drop wires and with bus wires, and making sure everything is reliable, everything is electrified and all that. So that's what we're going to be looking at here today. Hope you'll enjoy it. So here is an array of different tools and such and components that I use for wiring. So my layout uses all legacy TMCC. So I'm using 2 power bricks right there. Each loop has a power brick dedicated toward it. So the inner loop has a power bus going to that, which includes the loop and the yard. And then the outer loop is powered by the other brick, which also includes the shed over there. And I'll show you how that's all done. Now, these bricks come with special connectors that's meant for to plug into Lionel products, but I'm not using that, so I simply just snipped off that connector there, and then figured out which of the 2 wires in there was the hot and which one was the neutral, and then wired it accordingly with these wire nuts here. So when I separated this wire here, there's 2 wires in it, I found this one was the hot and this one was the neutral, and so that connects directly to my bus line for the outer line. And then if we look over here, oh, it's right there. If we look right here, that is for the inner line, that's the red. Now, for me, I have 2 separate bus lines. And if you don't know, a bus line is simply a wire that goes all the way around the layout that is used to supply power to various spots along the layout. And so the 2 outer line, or sorry, the outer line and the inner line each have their own separate red or hot, but both share a neutral. So if we look here, the neutral, this connector right here actually has 3 wires going to. Let me get that out of the way. You can see 1 wire there, 1 wire there, and 1 wire there. That's because they're sharing a neutral. Each of those 2 loops have their own power, but they share a neutral. So we actually have 3 bus lines going around the layout, 2 powered and 1 neutral, and we can see that right here. Here is one of those bus lines, here's the other one of those bus lines, and here is the neutral, the black one. And you can see how I've tied into that using these special connectors that I have. So it doesn't require any soldering, it doesn't require any splicing. All you really need are these tools, these components, some pliers, and wire strippers. And so you can see right here, it depends what gauge you're using, and I'll show you that here in a moment. For me, I used 14 gauge wire for the hot wires for the buses here, and then because it's going to be shared, I used 12 gauge, slightly larger. If you're not aware, the smaller the number gets, the larger the the diameter of the wire is. So smaller the number, the thicker the wire. And so these go around the entirety of the layout, and then I tie into them. And it's thick wire, so it has the constant voltage going all the way around the layout. And then we tie right into that with these. Now you'll notice they are color coded. So let's go ahead and look at that. So this is the pack that I have. I got it on Amazon, and you can see you have different wire gauges and done by each color. So the red ones are between 22 gauge and 18 gauge. The blue ones are between 16 and 14 gauge, and the yellow one is for 12 gauge. And these are all interchangeable with each other. They're called T-tap splice wire connectors, and they have the diagrams here of what you would do. And so very simply, I mean, the directions of the pictures, you take one of these connectors, you use your pliers to snap it on. Let me show you here. So you would take one of these guys, and you would put the wire right where the prongs are, right there where my nail is, and then you would close it down with some pliers, and that would cut into the wire. It doesn't cut the wire like completely, but it cuts into it, giving you a good electrical connection, and that goes right into the wire. That's what we see right there with the blue and then with the yellow over there. So you can splice the wire, and you don't need any solder. You don't have to cut it off. You don't have to strip it or anything. And then once you've done that, you get the other piece. And again, that's all color coded by gauge of wire. So for me, I used 20 gauge wire for my drop wires. So every 3 feet or so is a feeder wire, and that goes directly from the track into the bus. And that's what we see right here. These are all feeders. So here's the neutral feeders that go up to the track, and then here's the positive feeders that go up to the track. And so I use 20 gauge wire for the feeders, and all you do is you get one of these here. Again, it's one of these. You strip the wire. Let's get some light here. You strip the wire, you stick it down there, and then you clamp it. So you could probably do this with any old tool, but I specifically use a wire stripper like this, and it has a clamping gauge right there, and it's even the same colors, as you'll notice, red, blue, and yellow. And so you would just clamp it down, and the piece of metal in the little neck here gets pinched, and that holds the wire on, so that the wire is pinched in there with the metal, and it's going to stay together. And that's really all there is to it. So again, just to kind of demonstrate with a piece of wire here. I'm sorry for being so unprofessional. I don't have a tripod or anything. I mean, I do, but we can just set this down right there so I can use both my hands. And all you would do is just get that piece there, and you would just put the wire right in there. Let me see that. My finger's in the way. I don't think we're seeing that. We just put it right in there, and then you would close it over. You would just close it over. My finger's in the way. There we go. You would just close it over like that, and then you would take your pliers like this, and then just punch it down. And then it would snap, so you'll hear a little snap sound, and then you have spliced into the wire. I'm not going to do that here. But then once you have done that, once it's all down and together like that, see that little slit right there? Well, with the other piece here that would have your feeder wire in there, that has a blade there, or a male end, and this has a opening here, or a female end, and you would just simply put one inside the other and just press it down in there. It's not in there because I'm not doing that right now, but you would just put it all the way in, and then boom, you have an instant connection. The metal from here that is connected to the wire is now connected to the metal blade right there, and you have a connection. No solder needed, nothing, just a very simple, easy connection. That's how I have done my layout, and it's been working flawless. I've had zero issues with that. And again, just to show you, same thing right there. And again, they are all interconnected. Note the yellow and the red. Note the blue and the red. It's not that red goes to red and yellow goes to yellow. They're all connected. And so that is the way that I do my wire. And of course, you're going to need wire nuts like this for larger scale wires. And I have that on some places, as I showed you right there, for the power itself. And so those 3 bus lines just make a loop around my layout, and I'll show you that here. One other product I'll show you is a similar type of product, and this is for just connecting 2 wires together, and that is these right here. Again, I'm going to set the camera down so we can show you, but it's the same thing. This would be very handy if anyone is doing modules and you're going to have different pieces connect to each other, but you want to keep the electrical, you want to have your bus lines connecting to each other. So for example, let's say you have a module over here, and here's the wire for that module. And then you have another wire over, or another module over here, and there's the power for that one. And then of course you disconnect them when you tear it down and you move your modules around. Now you could use a wire nut like so, but you'd have to untwist it every single time, and that could get really annoying. So you could just simply use these. Again, all you would do is strip the wire back, which is already done. But for this case, all you would do, and by the way, when I make my extension, I'm planning on making an extension that will go off of right there. You can see the X pieces there where the cab forward is, and that extension will be a removable piece that'll kind of add an additional loop, and then we'll connect over there where the other piece is. When I do that, that's basically going to be a module attachment to the static layout here. And so when I do that, this is going to be the technique that I will use. And so again, to demonstrate that, you would have your power wire here, and then you would simply just put this in there like so. You would get your clamp, and then you would just bite down in the middle there until it's solid. And then again with the other wire, same thing. So that's a female end. If you look here, that is a female end right there. And then here we have the male end, the blade there. And again, you would strip that wire back, or strip the sheathing back, and then you just stick it in there, clamp it down, and then suddenly you have 2 plugs basically that you can just plug together. And I'll show you here. Right here, you would just make sure that the blade here fits in to the slide part there, and it is translucent, so you can see through to make sure that it is actually going in the proper way. Now this, you'll notice that there's a little loop there, and there's a little loop there, so it only goes in one way, like so, and there you go. And you can see that the blade is inside the slit piece. These are connected, and so if we had these wires actually connected in here, these wires would now have a solid electrical connection. And then whenever it was time To undo it, you would just simply undo it. Now, note that the metal piece came off. That's because it's not clamped down. If this was pinched down, the plastic and the metal would be tight, and that wouldn't happen like that. But since I'm doing this without it actually being clamped, the piece wouldn't come out. But just use your imagination, and there we go. So that just sticks back in there. But that's all that you would do. So I'm very, very happy with this product. It has worked great. It's relatively inexpensive, and you can get a bunch of them. Now, one other product I want to show you here are these little connectors. So I've talked about these before. These are meant for smaller wires. I use these for about 20 gauge and less, or 20 gauge and smaller. And it's just another easy way to connect your wires without having to worry about soldering, without having to do shrink tubing, anything like that. Now, it's not as permanent as solder and shrink tube and all that, but it still works really, really well. So it's just another way to connect your wires together. So here, so if I wanted to connect some wires, all you do, this is sprung in here. So there's this piece of metal right there, and it's sprung. You just press down on there. It trying to get a good angle on this. It opens up a little area in there, and you just stick your wire. Obviously, the wire would have to be stripped back, of course. But you just stick the wire in there, and then it holds. That was good timing. Again, this is kind of on the thick side because the sheathing is still on there, but if the sheath was off, it wouldn't be a problem. See, and there we go. We have a nice hold. And then you would do the same thing on the other side. You would stick another wire, and this is that same test wire. This is going to be too thick, I imagine. But same idea. You would stick that in there, and then suddenly you have a nice connection going across from here to there. Now again, it's not the most solid connection, but I've been using it for my yard lights and for a lot of LED lighting, and I haven't had any problems with it. And it's connected, there's two of them. Now these are independent. This is independent from this. And so I've actually sawn most of these off because it's not always the same length that I need. But that's what I have been doing for smaller jobs like that. And they work great. They work really nice. Got this nice big pack here. I've gone through hundreds of these now. That is the one that I have been using. And I'll show you how I've used that on the layout here. So let's go ahead and look under the layout. I'll show you some examples of things that I've done. So here's another example. You can see the 3 bus lines coming through. The red for the outside loop, the other red for the inside loop, and then the black is the common. And so here you can see this red going right here, and there's a splice right there. And if I can get the light right, you can see it goes right up there. That goes right up to the track. And there's the red, there's the black. That is a feeder line right there. You can see the black goes to the black bus there for the neutral. And so it's pretty clean. I'm pretty happy with how clean it all works out. And then there you can see I used one of those pieces there, one of those sprung connectors. And it's holding really nice. Let's look at the yard side. All right, so here we are underneath the yard, and this is the absolute nightmare, as you see here. But I have about 50 LED lights here, and each one needs 2 wires. So you do the math there. But again, you can see my bus line coming through right here, and then another connection there that goes right up to the track right there. Here you can see those being used again, and they hold well. They hold. So it's a nice sprung hold. Here you can see some more of those being used. And just tons and tons of wiring. Just just to have all those lights going. But it all works. I have some distributors here. That's going off of another bus line that goes to a transformer. So again, we have our black and white here, and it goes to this, which has various outlets that I can plug into. Those are mainly for lights. We're talking 20 gauge wire, 22 gauge wire, so much lighter wire. And if you look right over there, there's another example of one of those distributors. So it's all pretty logical once you get started. Again, I knew nothing about this other than there's 2 wires, but that's about it. So once you kind of just play around with it and start figuring out what works, you figure it out. Here you can see the terminus of my bus wire right there. So that's the bus wire, and I just kind of wrapped it around that leg right there. So not ideal to have an open wire like that, but nothing really happens to it there. And then here you can see the other terminus of my bus wire. So you don't have to connect it back to your transformer or anything. It's just sitting there. Now really I should put a cap on it and just kind of like put it up somewhere, but I just haven't done that yet. So that's for the outside line. And then there's the neutral wire there. And so it's a lot of work to do wiring, but it's simple. It makes sense. You just make sure you're using the right gauges of wire just to be safe. You know, always go higher on the gauges, and then we go above, and of course all the lights, everything is there. All of these platforms have their individual lights. Those 2 first lines in the yard are also on a power switch, so I can turn them on and off, because that's where I put those coaches. And so all you need is an insulated rail that is then powered by these switches here. So these switches give power on and off to that line. This one gives power on and off to the track where the switcher unit is. I can just kind of show you that here real quick. If we zoom over here, note right there, see that center rail? That's a plastic blurry pin. Hold on. That is a plastic pin right there. So there is no electrical connection going from the left rail to the right rail. And so the power for the layout stops right there. And then all you do is you have that independent, and then you have another drop wire that goes over here, and then it's simply connected to that switch there. So I can decide when power goes to that line, on or off. And that's useful for where you have engines, where you have lit cars, so they're not drawing amps, they're not drawing volts while you're not using them. So yeah, let's go back to the table and we can finish up here. All right, well that about wraps it up for this video here. Those are just some of the products I use, some of the techniques that I've used. I hope that's been informative for some of you guys out there, especially if you're new. If you're thinking like, oh, it's too much, I can't do that. You can. Again, I knew nothing about any of this stuff, and I just learned. We just learned, just be safe. I mean, we're talking, 18 volts, 20 volts. So nothing too terrible is going to happen if you make any mistakes. You're not talking about electrical outlets in your house, 120 volts or 220 volts or anything like that. It's very little. The worst thing that might happen is you might have some sheathing melt if you're using too thin a wire. So just don't do that on any floors you care about too much. But again, my bus wires are 14 gauge and 12 gauge, and then my dropper wires are 20 gauge. I haven't had any problems with overheating, with melting, or anything like that. But that's all the tools that I use. I need to get out of my garage. It's really hot in here. It's going on 85, and I got to get out of here. But thank you all for watching. I really appreciate everyone who watches and everyone who comments and everything, because my videos aren't very professional. I don't have a logo or a theme song or any special editing or anything like that. I just turn the camera on, do some basic edits, and get it out there. So I appreciate all of you who watch my videos, because they're not professional at all. It's just me with a camera having some fun out here. So thank you all for watch. Thank you all for all the subscribers that I have. I Thank you for your continual watching and your comments, all of you who comment every single video, and we have conversations there. I really appreciate all of that. So thank you all for watching, for going through this. I hope I was able to help some people, or maybe show some different techniques for some experienced people. So again, thank you all for watching. I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions. I'm happy to do that. I'll have some links in the description for where some of these products that I got. I'm Colby. This is Priest Brothers Lines, signing off.